On July 9, 2025, a monumental shift occurred in corporate history. Nvidia, the GPU powerhouse, became the first ever company to reach a $4 trillion market valuation, surpassing longtime titan Apple. That's right, what started as a gaming-focused graphics card maker has exploded into the backbone of the AI revolution, fueling everything from ChatGPT to Copilot. In just 25 months, Nvidia's value soared from $1 trillion to $4 trillion, rewriting the rules of corporate growth. But how did this quiet Santa Clara firm outpace the Cupertino legend? What strategic bets, technologies, and partnerships enabled this leap? That's what we're going to be unpacking today. We'll trace Nvidia's transformation from a gaming component company to the architect of AI infrastructure. We'll explore the financial fireworks behind its data center boom. Revenue for that segment has just hit $39.1 billion this quarter alone, up a jaw-dropping 73% year-on-year. And we'll compare business models, incremental product cycles versus exponential platform dominance. By the end of this episode, you'll understand not only how Nvidia claimed the number one spot, but what it means for the future of computing, corporate power, and the next decade of innovation. So grab your headphones, join our team for our deep dive, and let's learn a little bit more about the Silicon David's rise.
Okay, imagine this. A company takes, 30 years to hit its first $1 trillion in value. Now, picture that same company adding $3 more trillion in just 25 months. Seriously. That's not a typo. We're talking about the, frankly, staggering rise of Nvidia. They just smashed through a $4 trillion market cap, completely rewriting the rulebook on corporate valuation. So today, we're doing a deep dive. We want to unpack exactly how a company, mostly known for gaming graphics cards, how did they become the first publicly traded company ever to hit that $4 trillion mark? Low-and-cast giants like Apple and Microsoft.
Yeah, it's quite the story. And to help us figure this out, we got some really great sources. We'll be leaning on a CNBC piece. Nvidia briefly touched $4 trillion market cap for the first time, and also an article from Data Pro News called The Silicon David Nvidia Topples Apple is the first $4 trillion company. They both offer, a ton of insight into the speed and scale of this whole thing.
Right, let's start with that headline moment.
Yeah.
Because the speed is just wild. July 9th, 2025. Nvidia stock briefly hits a point where the company's valued at $4 trillion. Intraday trading. First company ever to do that. Now, okay, they didn't end the day there. Slipped back slightly to $3.97 trillion, but still, that cemented them as the world's most valuable company. Think about that. They leapfrogged Microsoft and Apple. Both of those guys had already hit $3 trillion way before Nvidia did. It's dizzying.
It really is. The acceleration is remarkable. And the history makes it even more fascinating, right? Like you said, 3 decades to get to $1 trillion. That was May 2023. But then things just went into overdrive. $2 trillion by February 2024. Just, 9 months later? Then $3 trillion in June 2024, only 4 months. And now, July 2025, they touch $4 trillion.
Yep.
So that's $3 trillion of market cap created in, just 25 months. It's unbelievable.
That rate of growth is it's insane. You almost wonder, is there anything like this in history, or is this totally new? How would you describe the nature of this shift compared to, say, Apple's rise?
Well, I'd call it a seismic shift, truly. We haven't really seen speed like this at this kind of scale before. I mean, for more than 10 years, Apple looked untouchable at the top, right? But Nvidia hitting $4 trillion, that happened just 5 trading days after they passed Apple's $3.9 trillion valuation back on July 3rd. So this isn't just, a gradual changing of the guard. It feels more like a fundamental rewrite of how quickly massive value can appear in today's economy.
Okay, so this company, the one we all knew from, high-end gaming PCs, how did they pivot so hard to become this dominant global player? What was the spark?
The core change is this. Nvidia stopped being just a niche GPU maker. They became, you could call them the undisputed architect of the whole AI revolution. Yeah. And that transformation, it really kicked into high gear after ChatGPT launched publicly back in November 2022. Suddenly, everyone was focused on the chatbot. But the smart money, the market, they started realizing the real winner wasn't just the AI apps themselves. It was the company building the massive computing power needed to run them.
Right, but lots of companies try to pivot or they see a trend coming. What was it about NVIDIA's strategy? Hear about CUDA. That wasn't just luck, was it? How did they nail it when others didn't?
No, definitely not just luck. That's a key point. It was really about years of strategic foresight. They've been building out CUDA, that's their Compute Unified Device Architecture, quietly for a long time. And this platform, this parallel computing setup, it turned out to be uniquely perfect for the crazy demands of machine learning. A lot of the big tech players, they were stuck in their old ways, focused on traditional CPUs that either didn't see the scale of the AI shift coming or just couldn't shift gears fast enough. CUDA became absolutely vital for training those huge language models and for AI inference, using the models in real time. So yeah, that long-term bet on parallel computing plus the whole ecosystem around it, it paid off massively, gave them a huge head start. And if you look at the money behind it, the financials are just extraordinary. Their data center business, that's the bulk of their earnings now. It reported, get this, $39.1 billion in the last quarter alone. That's up 73% from the year before. Giving you some context, their quarterly data center revenue is now bigger than the entire annual revenue of many Fortune 500 companies. And the bigger picture, for the full fiscal year 2025, their total revenue hit $130.5 billion. That's a jump of 114% from the previous year. These aren't just small steps up. It's like a whole new landscape driven by this incredible demand.
And the stock price just reflects that perfectly. Shares are up, 15 times over the last 5 years? Over 15% in just the last month? 22% since the start of this year. It's just gone vertical.
It really has. And if you compare NVIDIA's growth, that exponential curve, to Apple's model, Apple built this amazing ecosystem, right? Devices, services, generating steady, predictable income. Their growth was impressive, sure, but it followed known patterns, product cycles. NVIDIA's growth, it's driven by this huge technological shift, this inflection point, where demand for what they make just massively outstrips supply. It's a totally different kind of growth engine, almost like they're the only ones selling shovels in a giant gold rush.
Okay, so putting aside the numbers for a second,
Right.
What does this all mean for, for someone trying to grasp what really drives value today? What's the takeaway?
I think it shows us a new kind of competitive advantage, a really strong defensive position for NVIDIA. Their CUDA ecosystem, it creates these powerful network effects. The more developers use CUDA, the more valuable it gets, which pulls in even more developers. It's a cycle. And it's not just the chips, the hardware. That's important, obviously. But NVIDIA built this whole software layer on libraries, tools, frameworks that are now totally essential for anyone doing serious AI development. That software stack is much, much harder for competitors to copy than just building a competing chip. So this creates what you might call an infrastructure imperative. Their chips, the H100, the A100, they've become the absolute gold standard for training AI and running it. Even the giants, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, with all their resources, they need NVIDIA's silicon for their big AI plans. They basically can't build the cutting-edge stuff without these specific chips.
And what's really interesting is that this huge run-up happened even with those geopolitical issues hanging over them. We know about the chip restrictions hampering sales to China, which is a huge market. NVIDIA even said back in May, right, that the export limits on their H20 chip, the one made for China, would cost them $8 billion in sales. Their CEO, Jensen Huang, was pretty blunt. He said the $50 billion China market is effectively closed to U.S. industry. So managing this kind of growth despite losing access to that massive market is pretty remarkable.
It is, yeah. And the bigger implications of NVIDIA's rise are really profound, I think. It signals a fundamental shift in how value gets created now. Old metrics, things tied to physical assets, maybe even just having a huge user base, they're being overtaken. Now it's about computational power. It's about owning the critical AI infrastructure. It really highlights how crucial it is not just to have data, but to have the computing architecture to actually use that data for advanced AI. That seems to be the new foundation for innovation.
So it's clear the NVIDIA story isn't just about one company hitting it big. It's really a reshuffling of the whole tech deck, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It is. And look, while people raise valid questions about, is this sustainable? I mean, the company's worth more than most countries' GDP now. But the core trends driving their success, they aren't slowing down. We're seeing more digitization everywhere, AI popping up in more and more places, and just this relentless need for more computing power. If anything, NVIDIA seems to be riding trends that are speeding up, not slowing down, which brings up a really interesting question for you, the listener. What does it actually mean for innovation down the road now that this Silicon David has, effectively taken down the Cupertino Goliath? How does that rewrite the rules for creating value in this AI age?
Yeah, that's a great question. So thinking about everything we've unpacked today, what underlying computational trends do you think will define the next 10 years of innovation? Something to chew on.